Hi guys, for today's project you need 2 of these signs. When you stand them up, they measure in about 12 inches in height and 3.5 inches in width. For the base and the top, you can use any size square that you prefer. I decided to go with a base that was a little bit bigger than the top. First step, you're going to use an X-Acto or utility knife and remove the canvas from the board. The board isn't wood, it's a pressed board, so be careful when making cuts on to it to avoid any damage to the board. When cutting the canvas from the board, I left the canvas where it's stapled in at. I did this so that when I'm using the utility knife to pop out the staples, the canvas can help protect the board from any damage that my utility knife can do to it. Some of the staples were really deep in the board. That's why I chose to use the utility knife and not a pair of needle nose. You really need to work the blade underneath the staple and then rock it back and forth till it pops out. To cut this piece off, I'm just going to use my utility knife and cut around it. I'm not going to cut into the board. I'm just going to cut. You can see where the glue is at, where it was glued on. Use your utility knife and just cut around it. And after a few times where you see that it's loosening up, then you can take your thumbs and just pop it off. This part is optional. If you want your stands the same height, you can fast forward to the next step. These stand at 12 inches in height, but I want one of mine a little bit shorter, so I'm going to measure out 8 inches on one of my stands. Using the Dollar Tree handsaw, I'm going to cut where I marked my lines. With the end piece that I just cut off, I'm going to mark and cut out the middle part of it so that I can use it to make an end for my 8-inch stand. After you cut your piece out, use some sandpaper and sand the ends so that you can, when you glue it onto your board, it sits flush. I'm going to use E6000 and hot glue to glue the pieces together. I like to use hot glue with E6000 because E6000 takes a while to dry and the hot glue dries faster and it will hold the pieces together while the E6000 is drying. This part is optional too. I'm going to use wood filler to fill in the staple holes. If you don't have wood filler, you can also use caulk. While my wood filler is drying, I'm going to take apart the 2 squares that I'm going to use for the top of my stands. I decided not to use these 2 square signs as the base for my stand. I went with 2 signs that are more rectangular and more narrow in size. Taking these signs apart is fairly easy. I'm going to use my X-Acto blade and I'm going to pop the thumbtacks right out. The metal part comes right off. The burlap, if you're like me and like to reuse everything and you want to keep the burlap intact, it has an adhesive backing. It's probably sprayed with something adhesive. All you have to do is take a blow dryer, blow dry it for a little while and it will loosen up. It will come right off. Or depending where you live, with this heat, just leave it outside for like 1 minute and it will come right off. On the back of these specific signs, there are plated hangers that are screwed in, and they're screwed in with the tiny little screws, and they're usually the screws that nobody really has tiny screwdrivers for. If you don't have a small screwdriver, you can also use the corner of a credit card, or a pair of needle nose pliers will also work. The burlap did leave a sticky residue on the top side of the sign. I'm not going to use the top side, I'm going to use the other side. So I'm going to give it a quick sand, and I'm also going to start sanding the wood filler off of my stands so that I can prep for painting. These rectangular signs are the signs I ended up going with for the base of my stand. I'm going to center them, and then I'm going to use E6000 and some hot glue and glue them down. I'm going to use a spray paint to paint these, and I'm also going to wait to glue on the top of my stands till after everything is dry. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. I apologize for not having an ending video of it all put together because kids, that's why. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe.